Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Soo, your East Oakland advocate. Well, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And as I said, I'm going to go back in time and talk about depression. And uh, when depression first happened to me was shortly after I lost all my money back in 2008. And it was started out to be a pretty normal morning back there. Uh, I was in a beautiful house. You saw the opening thumbnail. That was my view out my atrium of my home to the lake. And that was High Rock Lake in North Carolina. The home, that was a $500,000 home, but because it had sat pretty much empty, and the bank was sitting on it for 2 years. And the realtor said, make a ridiculous offer on there and see if they'll take it. Only thing they can do is counter offer and come up. And so that's what I did. I made a ridiculously low offer at $105,000 for a $500,000 home. Bank accepted that, but it was on uh, cash only. I had to buy it cash only at the end of the closing. And so I took out, uh, excuse me. So anyway, when I took out the loan for the home, I sold my Oakland home because I was going through a divorce with my second wife. My second wife, a little history of her, just real quickly. She was had decided at one point going into being a psychologist and, and one that can prescribe medication and everything, a doctor. And then she had completed double masters on that. She had completed her internship, uh, and she did her 1 year internship at San Quentin, and so she was exposed to the really mentally ill and sick out there. And it was because of that experience and that 1 year internship that she decided to change her field of expertise from going into the psychiatric field to become going into the law field. And then that's where her and I picked up. And then, but it was 20 years of being analyzed by a psychiatrist, not a certified one, but it was constant. And then because I didn't agree with things that she said, she dragged my butt to other psychologists and marriage counselors and stuff. So we had a lot of problems, but it was based upon that I was the one that was really screwed up and she was trying to fix me. So and so anyway, long story short, morning I get up, typical morning, just like every other morning, start my coffee, turn on the TV, start listening to the news, and first thing that comes up was uh, the name of one of my three financial institutions had filed for bankruptcy overnight, and it was a huge one. And nowadays, I'll even mention it. It was Smith Barney, and Smith Barney had history, financial history, and investment history going back over 150 years at that point. And so they were one of the characters in my financial loss. The second one was my bank, my direct bank, which at the time was Washington Mutual. Washington Mutual set the absolute highest bar on the biggest losses in real estate and in banking history. And so that was bank number two. And then the third bank was Citibank. And they were able to unload a, a department that was bringing the entire Citibank group down. And so they were able to unload those through the bankruptcy. And so those were the three institutions. And here's the other thing, none of my money, except for my checking account, my direct checking account was FDIC insured, because everything else was in investments that were not insured. And so everybody said, well, everything's insured if it comes through. No, it's not. You are absolutely wrong on that. And you have no idea what you're talking about. And so, anyway, that's how I lost $3.25 million just like that overnight. Because all three, in fact, there was a big group. It was a group of 120 banks, had all as a group filed for bankruptcy overnight. And so that's how I was completely wiped out. And the only money that I had was because of a local bank that I had, which was BB&T. I had for my local bank, since I had moved out to North Carolina. Washington Mutual did not exist in Lexington, the city of Lexington, where I had moved to, or out by High Rock Lake. So I had to open a local bank. And so all my money was my income was at the time through my CDs. I had long since dumped all my mutual funds, 401s, and everything else that typically you would talk about, because they were too risky now. And now I was dependent upon the interest that I could gain on my portfolio. And my portfolio value at the time was $10 million. And it's a lot of work maintaining and managing that kind of money. And that's why I had money professionals, or supposedly money professionals, to help me and advise me along the way. But anyway, my income for the next 2 years when I had retired was $225,000. That's my personal income, and that was taxable income. I never got to that because everything went belly up. And so the only thing I had was the assets that I fully owned at the time. I did not own the home. The home, I only owned 60% of the home. I did not own the other 40% plus the interest. So I was in a very bad situation because my portfolio had collapsed and gone away. That ended my particular special debt obligation loan. And you can kind of look that up. And unless you have a certain minimum net worth, these types of loans are not even offered, nor do you even get information about these types of loans. And these are the kind of loans that go out to actors, actresses, congressional people, senators, people of big importance that don't get a regular check always, but can, because their net worth on paper, that they can get these loans based upon their net worth. But when my net worth collapsed, so did my loan, and my loan came due in full in 45 days. And so I had 45 days to move out of the home that I had purchased there. And I didn't have that. I couldn't get that much for that. You saw my great big 26-foot boat. I couldn't get that much. The most that I could get on loan at the time, because the economics and everything was collapsing there in North Carolina, it was extremely bad. It was way worse than California. And the most I could get for the boat was about $26,000, and that was it. And I ended up losing the boat. So came back to, and now the hearing that I'm fully financially devastated, and have only about $6,000 in my local bank. What am I going to do? Well, I tried going back to work, and I tell you what, racism is a very big and real thing in California. You're exposed to it, but out in North Carolina, it was really in your face, and I was really uncomfortable with the state, and had decided that yeah, this might be a pretty bad move, because also my neighbor, she was second generation uh, uh, Nazi type person, and she literally was in jail for a year because she shot at the people that lived in my house who were gay at the time, and she just missed them. So that's the kind of person she was. She was a white supremacist, and very in your face about it. And her hatred didn't extend just to me; it also extended to my two pit bulls. Actually, one pit bull, and then my other one, who looked like a pit bull, but she wasn't. She was a Labrador and Whippet mix. So she is very muscular. Uh, Labrador, black color, looked just like my Amstaff. So anyway, I started drinking that morning. Literally, I went from coffee to Wild Turkey 101 because I knew I was in real bad trouble, and things just got worse from there, because at the same time, my father was mugged and robbed back here in the Bay Area, in the Oakland Chinatown, and in the hospital. I was notified by my sister, who gave me an earful for moving out to North Carolina, uh, and told me I needed to get back there. And then I told her about my situation that suddenly happened. I said, "You heard about what the financial collapse that just occurred?" She said, "Yeah, I'm just understanding it." I said, "I'm a victim of that. I don't have the money to get back to Oakland." And said, "I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to keep a roof over my head and not be homeless here in North Carolina, because I know what's going to happen." So, long story short, I had to leave the state. The rental that I was in, I couldn't get employment due to racism, and not from any lack of skills or anything like that. It was just, sadly, racism. And the few odd jobs that I was able to get, because I could do some of the things, but not as a legal contractor. But I did some under the table work for some people who were struggling at the time, and got paid for it, but didn't work out real well. Ended up back in the Bay Area, had a job in the Bay Area, but then that one was with a real slimy organization called Equity Equity Holdings, and they were at the time the third largest national uh, home apartment rental agency. They use REITs, REIT, real estate investment trusts, on a lot of their properties, and they were. I learned the insides of that ruthless, I mean, really ruthless business, and what they do, and it's a real eye opener. But when I lost that job, uh, I wasn't able to gain any more work, and I did work for about 2 months as a census taker in 2010, and that was the last work that I had after that. And shortly after that, uh, uh, I sold off literally everything I had, if it wasn't already repossessed, which was my my vehicle, my cars, my truck and my car, and my one boat. So I lost everything, and I sold off all my personal property, sold off most of my weapons. Certain weapons I can't sell because they're not legal in the United States for anybody who is not part of the military or special operations, which I continue to be part of Department of Defense Special Operations today. And so that's why uh, I'm valid to hold these kind of weapons that I do. I had them stored with a friend out of the area, and then since I needed them after the burnout a little over a year ago, I reclaimed those weapons and reactivated those weapons, and that's part of my FFL. But anyway, the stress of becoming homeless was uh, real real hard. I lost a lot of sleep. There was a lot of stress. Doctors saw blood pressure. I mean, I was a mess mentally. And then there came a point where I just said, I give up. Why I spent 40 years, nearly, well, I was working since I was 16. So 16 to 47, that's 31 years getting to where I was. I'm not I'm not going to live long enough again to rebuild that. And so it was like I gave up. And that's what we see happening to a lot of folks on the streets in that are homeless. They just give up. Uh, the embarrassment and then the shame of losing everything. Plus, now you're living on the street, so you're really embarrassed about that, and you don't want anybody to find out because I've been there, and I was a mental mess, and that adds to your depression, and that's part of the PTSD, uh, the trauma, the PTSD trauma of becoming homeless and living homeless, and that was how I was able to get a mental declaration. Uh, for my SSDI and through a mental uh, declaration, PTSD, and brought on by trauma from the streets. But then there's also tests, so it wasn't a cakewalk like some people think. There was nearly a year where I had to be on medication, and that was the year where I really depended on Pandora, my dog, to keep me alive because with the medications, I hated the medications, and I understand why a lot of mental uh, um, patients have issues with the medications. It's because the effects that they have on people in with the medications I had, I couldn't remember what happened an hour ago. Sometimes I couldn't remember what happened 30 minutes ago, and forget about uh, what happened 24 hours ago. I have no idea what happened 24 hours ago. And it also made me violent. One of the pills made me violent, and so the doctor took me off that one real quick. But it was a year. I had to stay on that for a year. And on the last appointment, he says, uh, you've already been approved. You're receiving, and then I'm finalizing your paperwork so that you will permanently receive disability for PTSD uh, on your trauma, because the voices that you hear, they were real. So he was actually validating all the things that I was going through, because here's one of the things about depression brings on voices, the voices that you hear in your head uh, as a normal turn really evil and negative on you, and they turn on you and tell you that you're not worth anything, you're using up valuable resources, you're a waste of time, nobody cares about you. So there's a lot of things that happen to you mentally that really send you down that deep dark path to suicide, and that's where I ended up in 2009. And I was mad at my ex-wife at that time, and so uh, I was going to do myself in on her birthday, and it's like, here's your happy birthday present, bitch. And that was my attitude, because I was so depressed at the time. I'd lost everything. She didn't care about me. In fact, she was laughing about it, and my dad and we were still estranged at the time. He allowed me in and out of his house, but I avoided him mostly. And so that's how I was able to avoid detection for a lot of my symptoms of suicide. And on the night that I actually did everything, I went and had my last meal that I thought I was going to have at my what I wanted, and got bottle of vodka that my favorite vodka at the time, went out to where I was going to watch the sunset, and then once the sun had set, because I was drunk, I had my weapon with me. I would have just shot myself in the head, and it was over. I had a note attached to me so that when my body was found, people would understand and everything. And I thought everything was going to be fine because my dad was he was in some questionable health at the time, but this was 2009. He collapsed 2010. So it was a good thing that my suicide was not successful. I got too drunk, passed out, and then woke up, and then woke up to two flashlights on top of me, which were officers. They had already taken my weapon out of my holster on my side, and then also verified my credentials. So they also had to return my weapon to me, even though they could see that it was apparent suicide. But here's the thing: suicide is not illegal. Period. Suicide is not illegal, and because I'm a federal person with a federal license on my weapon, they can't do anything to me. And not California marshals, CHP, nobody. But that doesn't hold me above the law. I still have to obey the law just like everybody else. So anyway, that brings us up to talking about the depression on and suicide, and then also because of the PTSD trauma that I experienced living on the streets as homeless, that immediately qualified me for SSDI, disability insurance. And so I went from $350 to $550 during the question period, and then finally to $895, where I stayed for a number of years but then I had annual increases, cost of living increases, to bring me up to, I think it was just over $1,000 before I went on Social Security. And then that's when everything really got helpful and changed. But that's how I got by, and it wasn't easy. And I'll tell you what, I've been under psychiatric watch and care and everything because of the work that I did. After every mission debriefing, we were required to sit down with psychologists for the next 30 days, at least once a week, and they make sure that we're okay for next duty, next assignments, to continue carrying our weapons. So there's a lot based on psychiatric evaluations, and because of the special type of operation I was doing, we appear to be skirting the laws of everywhere. Literally, we were skirting the laws, territorial sovereignty laws, everything, in the name of security and counterterrorism for our country. And so that we had to be very, very stable and without question about our loyalty and our truthfulness. Our truthfulness was absolutely the highest and above all. Nothing can save you. The truth was the only thing that they cared about. And you could have some negative things in your background. They certainly knew about mine. My gang affiliations in my teen days, and how dangerous I was, and what I was capable of doing. Also, they were aware of how well I shot, and that I came from a law enforcement and military, high-ranking military family. So, and even my half brother served as a tank commander for the United States Army. So our government was well aware of me, and well aware of a lot of you out there that you may or may not even be aware of, and it doesn't matter. But mentally, I was a mess. But here's the good thing: you can recover from that. I've recovered from that. It takes time. You need help. You can't do it alone. And I certainly didn't make my recovery alone. And there were a lot of people along the way. One of my mentors was the late Mike Lee. He was one of those that really helped get me back on track, talking to me, also putting some negatives, turning them into positives and incentives for me to turn my PTSD and depression around and make something uh, valuable come of this. And that's talking about and working with the homeless and working for the homeless, showing that things and solutions are out there. So that's what has come out of my PTSD, my depression, and one of the things that, in closing, that I want to say about suicide is that a lot of the people who were interviewed who survived the jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, uh, the three survivors who made it, said that they regretted that decision and that jump the moment they left the Golden Gate Bridge. So think about that. They had approximately 12 seconds to think about their demise and what's to come before hitting that water. And they were fortunate to survive those three. And it, it's something that you yourself, if you're feeling suicidal, please seek help. There's helplines out there. Please use them. Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.